All right, that story by Trixie Ngado forms the basis of our discussion at this hour. And joining me in studio is two gentlemen who I believe have probably part of the solutions for food security in the African continent. On my immediate left is Dr. Dyno Keatinge, and he is the Deputy Chairman for the Association of International Research and Development Centers for Agriculture. Good morning.
Good morning, Akisa.
Thank you
for inviting me on the show.
Thank you for coming in. Always a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you.
All right, and we also have Dr. Dennis Rangi, who is the Director General of the Center for Agriculture and Bioscience International. Good morning.
Good morning.
You're well? How is your morning?
Very well, actually. Traffic was a bit horrible, but yeah.
Welcome to Nairobi. Thank you very much for coming in, gentlemen. And I'll start with you, Dr. Rangi. We've seen the issue of food security is a concern, not partly to any country, but to the continent at large. Are we heading towards the right direction when it comes to realizing the Sustainable Development Goal 2?
I think we are definitely heading the right way. As you know, the Sustainable Development Goals, SDGs as they're called, were agreed upon in September of last year. And as a continent, since the time mechanisms are beginning to being put in place. More recently, Africa has established a Sustainable Development Goal Center based in Kigali to really help us to see how we can address this problem in a very concerted effort as a continent. So I think we have started on a right note, and I think we are starting very early on. And I believe that unlike with the MDGs, I think this time Africa will be better prepared to really meet those challenges. How
are we going to, what are some of the measures we would put in place to meet these challenges that we are facing as a continent now?
I think, first of all, investment in agriculture is very, very critical. We've been talking about agriculture being the driver of most of the economies in Africa. So I think if we can get our governments and the political leadership to really focus on agriculture, in my view, I think we'll be doing the right thing in terms of addressing the issue. And I think also in terms of involving all the stakeholders in a more cohesive and a seamless way.
All right. Yeah. Dr. Keatinge, currently Kenya is experiencing a drought. About 23 counties are affected. Almost 1 million Kenyans are affected by this current situation. And it's not only in Kenya we see such situations. We see it in other parts of the continent. You deal with research most of the time. Where are we getting wrong that we would have El Nino, massive rains, an abundance of it, then later we would have a drought? Where are we getting it wrong as a continent?
Well, in fact, this is historically something that's happened many times over the centuries and will continue to happen. The important thing for the farming community here is to be resilient so that their enterprises can, in fact, cope with these ups and downs of wet and dry. And there are ways for good agronomy now which can help cope better, not completely, but better than farmers are doing at the moment when they tend to be dependent very much on single maize crops. There are other better things perhaps to grow in association with that.
Such as?
Well, for example, medium maturing pigeon pea is a very nutritious vegetable. It's drought tolerant because it's very deep rooted. And that would be, to have some of that on your shamba would be a way of helping to cover these rather dry periods when maize is less productive.
When you're talking about, of course, you're talking about the alternative crops that we would grow to suffice for what we've been doing over and over the years. Which direction should farmers be heading now?
Well, first of all, you talked about food security.
Yes.
I don't actually believe that's the major problem. It is food and nutritional security is the major problem. Malnutrition, both lack of vitamins and minerals, is the important issue for human health here in Kenya. And so therefore the major piece of advice we would offer farmers is to try to, in fact, have a better range of crops growing on their farms which helps cope with those nutritional requirements for their family. So most people in Kenya, in fact most people in the world, don't eat enough fruit and vegetables. And they don't eat it because it's expensive. Grow it on your own farm and you've solved the problem.
Do you think African governments, Dr. Rangi, do you think African governments are committed to achieving the SDG2?
I think they are. I mean, like I've said already, I think the establishment of a center to really focus on addressing SDG2 and other SDGs it shows that clear commitment. But I think recently I think a month ago there was a big meeting in Nairobi at the AGRF, and then we had a TICAD meeting and all that. And all these things, African presidents, they said the right things, and I think the political leadership is showing that commitment. I think if we don't do anything, then we are dealing with a booming population that will be very restless, and we've got to act. So I don't think there's any choice at all.
Yeah.
I think the leadership, I'm convinced, is doing something about it. Yeah.
What makes food security and nutrition such a challenge in the continent?
I think what makes it, number one, I think, first of all, we come up with very good policies. But at the end of the day, we tend to have problems of implementation. So it's one thing having policies, but it's one thing enforcing those policies and making sure that we are providing the investment to make sure that we are realizing what we've agreed. So that's part of the problem. Number two, I think a lot of research has been done or being done, but then again, taking that research and making sure that it's having the right impact on the ground is another concern. And weak systems in terms of just looking at extension. I think if you look at Africa, the only country that has got very strong extension system, and actually it's quoted as one of the best after China, is Ethiopia. And you can see that they're making a lot of impact. And I think that's an example that we need to emulate. And so I think all the ingredients are there. Operationalizing all these issues is what is eluding us. But I think the leadership is beginning to take a step back and looking at where things have gone wrong and making sure, because Africa cannot continue begging.
Yes.
Africa must learn to feed itself and probably feed the rest of the world.
Given how rich we are, we have very rich land, so it should be very embarrassing for us to keep begging as a continent.
Exactly.
But to you, Dr. Keatinge, earlier, as I'd mentioned, the drought situation is when an African down at the grassroots levels thinks about food security, the first question that comes to their mind is, will I be food secure? Will my children be food secure 10 years from now? From the kind of research you've done, is there any sustainable solutions to the perennial drought that some African countries face?
Well, as I said, drought will recur and recur. And we need to put farming systems into place that can be resilient within that context. And yes, there are plenty of things that can be done. But the most important thing that the media can help us with is that most people lack the knowledge of understanding that they are malnourished to begin with, and B, how they can cope with that. So, for example, we all know that the World Health Authority recommends you eat 5 a day and it should be 400 grams of fruit and vegetables, but do you know what that actually looks like? Because the weight of a soccer ball is the amount of fruit and vegetables you have to eat every day to meet that 400 grams.
Most of us don't do it.
That's right. And so therefore, if we can in fact better educate farming families, particularly women, householders, in the need for getting a properly balanced diet into their children, I think that the farming system that then follows logically from that is a much more resilient one, and one which can cope with not only drought, but you have to expect flooding to follow it.
Yes. So according to you, the lack of information in the public also hinders the achievement of food security and nutrition.
Well, absolutely. The knowledge that many children are malnourished, particularly from women's early pregnancy and birth, is something that we know how to cure, but it is not a knowledge that is freely available outside amongst the media. If all doctors, all nurses, all media people, all agriculturalists are saying feed young women better before they become pregnant, then we're much less likely to have malnutrition problems in the future.
Dr. Rangi, do you think Africa will ever get to a point where it feeds itself?
Definitely so. I think there's no question. I think all the efforts that we're putting in place are not going to be in vain. We are here, for example, in the last 2 days, having a meeting called the Global Action Plan for Agricultural Diversification, and we are looking at diversifying our feeding habits from the 4 main crops that the world is dependent on. And Africa's got quite a number of indigenous crops that we've been used to growing, that can really help tide us away from the food insecurity issues. So, and I think people are beginning to be aware of that people begin to be health conscious, and in so doing, people are going more to these traditional vegetables. And I think what we really need to do is to, going back to what Dyno just said, we need to create markets for those food products so that people can grow them, knowing that there will be a place to sell them in addition to eating them. So I think we're putting all efforts in place to really make sure that we're going to be food secure. And I think in 10 years' time, the way Africa is going, there is a strong realization that agriculture is what is going to sort us out, and a lot of effort is being put in agriculture. So there's no question that we'll get there. We will get there at different speeds as countries,
yes,
but we'll definitely get there as a continent.
Yeah, you're saying something?
Could I add something to that? It's ironic that Kenya, sitting on its northern doorstep, has one of the most nutritious vegetables known to man, moringa, the drumstick tree. It is the very high levels of vitamin A and vitamin C and high levels of iron and zinc. It's ideal for diets for young children and women, and yet it's not exploited. You go to the Philippines, they're growing it all over the place.
All right, so something to pick from that. Gentlemen, thank you very much for coming in. We could go on and on, but I understand we do not have too much time. But of course, that is Dr. Rangi, who is the Director General of the Center for Agriculture and Bioscience International. Thank you for coming in. And of course, Dr. Dyno Keatinge, he is the Deputy Chairman for the Association of International Research and Development Centers for Agriculture. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for coming in. And at this point, we'll take a short break. Do not go too far. We still have a lot lined up for you here on KTN Worldview.